What's going on, everybody? This is your friend Golden Lotus. I'm back with another segment on health, wellness, and self-discovery. Today what I'm going to go through is I'm going to talk about what spirituality is. There's a lot of misnomers out there about what people think spirituality actually is, and this is something I come across a lot with my clients, especially directed towards me. They talk about me as though I am spiritual and something else is not, like mostly in reference to themselves, that I am spiritual and they are not spiritual, as though spirituality is something that's only over here but not over here. And this is common, and I think that it's damaging in the sense where it doesn't allow us to take in a complete worldview. And in my definition, that's sort of what spirituality is more of a complete worldview. It's taking into account a lot of different things. I'm taking into account my sensations to allow me to understand the outside world. I'm using my thoughts. I'm checking my thoughts. So this idea that spirituality or something that you can hold in your hand, somebody will say, oh, this crystal is spiritual. But so is the floor, and so are you, so is the dog. Spirituality isn't only contained somehow magically in one space. And I guess that's kind of what I want to get to, is I'd like to get out of the realm of sort of magical thinking, where we have this idea that this thing is magical, but this other thing isn't. Now, and I feel like that's a sort of a very young idea of ours, is that this thing here has a magical power and this other thing is evil. Like it's like sort of the storyline that we're creating, and it's something that we're doing with our judgments. And these aren't judgments that necessarily, I feel like they don't really help us in any significant way. Basically what it's doing is it's kind of redefining the world in the normal way that we always define it. So you're just adding a new skin on top of it. So instead of the background being blue, the background is now red. Or instead of the background being red, you're turning the background to orange. But you're basically using the same premise, just in a different way. You're taking a different word and applying it in the same way that we normally do. Now, spirituality, as far as I comprehend it, is really more about our depth. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about us breathing our breath, us taking time to sit in meditation, us taking extra time to experience our sensations, us canceling out, cutting back our reactivity in the world. Now, that doesn't really, to me, sound all that spiritual. But what it does experientially is it expands the world. Now, I understand why a lot of people think this way. I understand why a lot of people talk about this subject in this way. And we still come from a background of being good boys and good girls, where we were lauded for some behavior and were punished for others. So there are some aspects of us that we consider good and other aspects that we consider bad. This is something that we do to civilize children, because otherwise we wouldn't really know how to live in this world. It's not appropriate for us to just sort of lash out whenever we feel like lashing out, which is true. But that kind of construct also became the way that we ultimately see the entire world. And that doesn't really talk about us in our experience of life. That's just sort of the set of rules that we needed at that stage in order to become civilized adults who live in a world. Don't hit people with your car, don't hit people with your hands, don't take other people's stuff. I mean, basic sort of, morality, really. And so that's really the role of our parents and teachers. They're not necessarily wrong or bad for doing that. That's actually what they're here to do. So that's where we get this good-bad framework from. And that's sort of how we operate throughout the bulk of our lives, until we encounter something that is really asking more of us, asking more of our depth. Maybe we have a death in the family, or maybe we have actually a death of a pet would be a death in the family, but we have some sort of extraordinary circumstance that all of a sudden changes that framework of the rules, because usually in that framework you think being a good boy or a girl, you get a reward, but all of a sudden that reward, there's not a reward. It's something that seems like a punishment, which is actually just a natural part of life. So as adults, our job is to return to that natural part of life, that natural ebb and flow within ourselves, to return to these places that we've really shut down for long periods of time. So that's sort of the crux of this whole, this is spiritual, this is not, this, painting the world, building all these little structures throughout the world, where my personal experience of spirituality, and where I know from many other high-level teachers, is really sort of, it's more about dissolving those structures. It's more about going within ourselves, because the structure doesn't exist externally. The structure exists internally. So what we're going about is dissolving these structures internally so that we can have a more expanded feeling in life. We can have a more expanded relationship with life, and we can have a more expanded relationship with everybody else in our lives. So that, to me, is what spirituality is. And I want to put this out there because I'm building on something. In our next segment, I'm going to get more into that, talking about judgment, I'm going to break that down a little bit more about the importance of it, because I know when I talk about those subjects, a lot of people automatically say, well, that was wrong that they did this to me. And it wasn't. It was actually important that it did happen so that we can live in a civilized fashion, because it's very important that we do live, that we understand the basics of civility. So that's it for today. That's it for this segment. We're going to stop, we're going to do some words, we're going to talk about the Daily Blue, and we'll be back with another segment.
Hey Larry, every week I watch your show.
As you should.
And I know so much about sports now. Thank you.
You should be learning about sports, and everybody should be watching all our other shows here on the Daily Blue.
Why are you promoting the other shows? I thought you were the king of the Daily Blue.
That's true, but I'm all about everybody. It's not always all about me.
No,
all
it really
about
is.
The team.
Every day I wake up and it says, today is all about me, Corinne. Don't lie.
I've heard that.
Don't lie. Tune in every week to the Daily Blue and you'll see Sports Biz with LD, and you will get a lot of information, updates in sports, and a little bit about Sports Biz.
And that's me, Larry Davis, Sports Biz with LD.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Golden Lotus. I'm back with another segment. I'm going to keep building on what I started with. The premise was talking about what spirituality is and what it isn't, according to my personal experience. But really what it's meant to do is I want to break up this judgment. Because when you're saying spirituality's here and it's not here, that's a judgment. That's not a direct experience. So what I want to get into is the etiology of judgment, what exactly it is. We think that it's bad, but I'd like to really talk about what it's actually here to do for us. So what judgment is here to do for us is, realistically, it's keeping us safe. It's keeping us within a certain parameters so that we can so that we can comprehend the world. Because not comprehending the world is a very frightening thing to us. And we really don't like to spend much time there. So what we do is we create this internal framework that we kind of put out there into the rest of the world. And why it's important to pierce through this is because I've talked about this before, is everything that we really want is sort of outside this framework. And we think that our judgment is true. So it's important that anybody who's seeking more wellness, more depth in their life, we have to really find out. We have to be honest with ourselves and find out, is this really true? Because we never really ask ourselves that. Is this really true? You know, am I hating this person for this thing? Is this really, really true? Was it really, really cruel what they did to me? Or am I just having this sort of extreme reaction to this? And what I found is a lot of times if I sit with myself and I'm really, really honest with myself, where I'm not wanting to make, if I take away the end game of me being right and the other person wrong, if I take away that end game, that just leaves me in a very, very, very malleable spot. It's really, really nice, and I get to really be curious with myself and ask, is this really genuinely true? Is this person genuinely being a jerk to me? Is that what's actually happening? And maybe they were being a little terse. Maybe they were being a little rough. But does that and then so it's like a rabbit hole. But what does that really mean anything to me? Does that really have anything to do with me, or does that have to do with whatever that person's day was like? Because if I'm really sit there and I'm really honest, that's usually what I get to, is that other person's day was in some fashion that I have no idea about. But I'm taking this little barb so personally, I'm letting it wreck everything about me. And it's not really even about me. It's just something, they just want to, for whatever reason, I take it in sort of blunt terms. What are they looking to do right now? They're looking to push me away a little bit. Okay, I'll back up. I feel like that's more in alignment with what I'm actually seeking, which is peace. I don't want more confrontation, because that confrontation isn't going to lead realistically towards anything that I really want. That person isn't going to concede that I am correct. It's just going to be two people who think they're correct banging heads against each other. And so let me bring this back a little bit. So back to judgment, what it is, what it's doing. So our judgments are keeping our world steady. Because I think when people get too much into the idea of rejecting their own experience of judgment, you're rejecting an actual experience of your own. So it's kind of, when judgment comes up and you just say, shut up, get out of here. When you're doing that, you're actually being harmful to yourself. So both rejecting judgment and judgment itself are both harmful things that you do to yourself. Your judgment doesn't affect another person. Your rejection of your judgment doesn't do anything for anybody else either. My process is more about it being included, including everything, including the fact that my judgment exists. Because that's another thing that I see in spiritual. I don't judge. It's not true. Everybody judges and evaluates the world. Everybody, you wouldn't function as a human being if you were not living within these confines. Now there are people out there who exist with less judgment, but that's usually people who have done a lot of work on themselves. It's a very small group of humans on Earth that are really doing that. So when I hear people saying, "Oh, I don't judge," I see people just kind of cordoning off more and more sections of themselves. What I'm saying is to bring more and more sections of yourself to your own table. And that's back in alignment with what I was talking about earlier about spirituality. Bringing yourself to the table. Bringing everything in. This is not something special, and this is something not worthy over here. That's basically our judgment defined. Good, bad. I'm good, they're bad, they're good, I'm bad. That's basically our judgment in a nutshell. And so what I'm suggesting to you is to remain open to yourself, remain open to all of your experience. You can be open to your judgment and not believe it. Like I can hear the judgment talking about other people, and I don't have to believe that. So we think that, because we're allowing it in, that way, oh my God, I have to believe it. Because you listen to a heavy metal song doesn't mean you have to believe it. Because you listen to a rap song doesn't mean you have to believe it. You're hearing something, and you're having this experience. And so that's what I really, really love for all of you to get more tapped into, is being more in love, being more curious about your own experience. Because if that were the way that you were going to define spirituality, I would say that is it in a nutshell. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to do anything with deities or God. It's really being curious and open to your own experience in the moment. I guarantee you that if you take any of these tips, you take the meditation, you take the mindfulness, you take the sensing of your hands and feet, you take the openness to your own experience, I guarantee you it will start to transform your entire life. It's actually more harmful in these other ways that we're sort of applying this good boy, bad boy premise to all these terms of depth, because spirituality is meant to drive us deeper. It's not meant to cordon us off even more. So I hope that this was a helpful segment for you today, guys. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Make sure you check out all the other shows out here on the Daily Blue. I really appreciate everything that this company's doing, especially what they're doing for me. Make sure that you check me out on Facebook. I'm there at Golden Lotus. You could always email me at not my email. You could actually go to my website, www.goldenlotus.me, and send me an email with questions. I mean, feel free to, ask me anything. I'm usually pretty responsive within a week or so. So I'll check you out next time.